So it's still going to be about investment appraisal. Yeah. But this time around, we'll be looking at foreign operations. So in FM, we did investment appraisal as well. However, totally different. Yeah, in terms of focus, you were focused on local investment, a company investing in the same country where it's operating. So there's no issues about foreign exchange. There's no issues about different currencies, right? But this time around, we want to look at what does it mean to invest in another country. How do you appraise such investment? Yeah, the methods are going to be similar. The same methods you've learned, the NPV, the IRR, which we dealt with in the last class, the modified IRR, duration, modified duration, and I'm sure you well okay with those methods. Yeah, we've dealt with those ones. Yeah, but now specifically when we're going outside our jurisdiction, when we're going outside where we are based, how do we appraise such investment? That is what we want to start today. Yeah. But but before we go into that investment, appraisal itself, it's quite important that you even understand what are we talking about when we're talking about foreign operations. Yeah, foreign operations. Yeah, you probably want to see it in two ways. Now you're talking about you're doing a foreign project, yeah, which is your foreign investment. And likewise, you can actually have what you will call maybe international trading. So you can be actually doing trading, which means you are buying and selling with a company that is in another country. So any of these will require you to understand how international trade work, how currency flows work, and what is the implication for you as an executive, what's an implication for you as an advisor. Yeah. So usually you know that companies that participate in these types of activities, generally you call them multinationals. That's why you hear someone saying, "Oh, I work with a multinational company." So multinational companies are those companies that have, to put in definition, more than 25% of their revenue from foreign country. So if you generate more than 25% of your revenue from another country, different from your country of origin as a company, then that means you qualify to be a multinational company. Yeah, very important. Yeah, and the question is why do companies go to trade in another country? Why? Why would they do that? It can be for strategic reasons, yeah, which means not necessarily driven by active trading profit, but they are looking more into things that have to do with the sustainability, long-term existence of the company. Or it might just be for international trading. And this is where they want to just make profit, yeah, on the short term. This is on the long term, or this is on a short to medium term. Right. So this is the reason why they do get involved in foreign operation, why they become multinationals. But looking at international trading quickly, why will companies go and trade in another country? Any view? Why do you think a company would leave United States and say, no, I'm going to go and start selling things in the UK or start buying things in the UK? Why would a company want to do that? Fantastic. What you're talking about is economies of scale. Yeah. Because it's possible that a company just believes that it's cheaper for him, for that organization to actually establish their company in another country or to buy their resources from that place because it's cheaper or because they can leverage on so many production. They produce so much in that, say, China, and they're able to reduce their cost of production because they are producing so much in that place. And from there, they can start sending across all the other locations where they are based. Then with that, they're able to reduce their cost of production. And they are better off. It is possible. It can also just be because of choices. Yeah. So probably a company just believe that it is just impossible for me to be able to produce something in that country, but I have to sell into that country. So take for instance, Apple will probably not produce anything in Gambia. However, they are still selling their product in Gambia. So it's impossible for them to be able to produce because it's uneconomical for them to be able to do so. However, they will still have to sell because they want to make money there. Yeah, so to have varieties and choices of product in the locations, it might necessitate a company to start selling across their existing country. So they might have to go out of the current country and go sell somewhere else. Yeah. And likewise, even if you look at seasonal product, yeah, most of the fruits that you have, there are few of them, if there is any, that will be produced in the same country from January to December. Take, for instance, you take strawberry. Let's we take strawberry. Strawberry probably comes out in Canada maybe during winter and spring, sorry, spring. Yeah, so which means after spring, you don't have strawberry, but you still have to eat strawberry even in winter and in summer, right? But what happens? So whatever they've made during spring, yeah, they sell. However, there's a place like Australia that will also be in spring when Canada is in winter or in summer. So they go into another location to get that product that has an opposite weather, and they can also ship it into another country that has the weather that is not suitable for that particular product or whatever they're trying to sell. So that accessibility of choices can also necessitate a company to start buying things from another country. So if a company is selling strawberry in Canada now, during winter, they will have to go to Australia to go and buy because winter in Canada is like a summer, is opposite in Australia. So those are some of the reasons. And another one you can think about is mere competition because it's quite important you understand these basics. Those are the things you will need when you're having discussion because at the end of this topic, we'll now start looking at full exam questions and you'll see how your understanding of these things have to come. Because if you're advising a company to go and establish another branch in a different country, you need to be telling the examiners why should they do that. Is it because of economies of scale they are advising, or because you think they will be able to sell more varieties there, or is it because that item does not exist in that place and you think if they go sell as a first time seller they will make money, or is it just because of competition in that country that you want to go in there so that you can drive prices down and probably be um, a low cost or low price or get low cost advantage. Yeah, so you need to have that basic understanding, and that's why I'm going through this theoretical part first before you trying to looking at numbers. So this is not a paper where you just focus on calculations alone. Extremely important you have a full understanding of the concept, of the impact on the economy, the impact on the company, and your role as an executive. So you have to be able to link all those three together. Yeah. So if understood those whys, they try to do things internationally, they go into different countries. Yeah. But all of this, you can actually summarize it into two things. And that is what you call number one, is that you call it two theories, which is a theory of absolute advantage or what you call comparative advantage. So which means when a company goes to produce in another country or even in his own country or whatever he's doing, we can explain those benefits or reasons either using this theory of absolute advantage or comparative advantage. And what do I mean with that? When you're saying, okay, a company has an absolute advantage or a company has a comparative advantage, I'll explain it with a typical, just an illustrative example to help you understand what I'm saying. Let's say we're looking at a company in Japan. So you have a Japanese company and you have an American company, US. So these two countries, they both produce cars and they produce trains. So let's say Japan will produce 1,800 cars in a year and US will produce 700 in a year. Whereas Japan is producing 650 trains in a year, whereas US will produce 300 trains in a year. Yeah. So with this example, we're saying that resources, raw materials are available to both countries. So both US and Japan have the same amount of raw materials, the same resources. And this production that you are seeing, these figures you are seeing, yeah, is limited by the local demand. So this is what they produce for consumption in their countries. So this 1,800 cars is used in Japan, 650 trains used in Japan, 300 trains in the US. That's what they need, and US needs 700 cars. Yeah, and that's what they produce. So what we are saying here is two economies. This is the first economy, this is the second economy. In terms of advantage, here, obviously, Japan has what you would call an absolute advantage. Because when you look at each production in isolation, separately, you realize that Japan actually is producing more than US, both number of cars and number of trains. So you look at it, Japan has an advantage because Japan is going to be selling more product than US. Yeah. So because of those more units that they are producing, that is absolute advantage because we are not doing any fraction, we are not comparing any ratios to decide. We're just looking at the absolute units that's being produced by each country. And we know that Japan has that. Now, what about comparative advantage? That is slightly different. And please pay attention. Slightly different because here you need to be talking about the opportunity cost to be able to decide which country has a comparative advantage. Yeah, is it a Japanese company or an American company? And this is what you have to do. Let's look at cars first of all to say, okay, yeah. What we are talking about when we're talking about comparative advantage is just asking ourselves that if Japan decides to focus on cars alone instead of producing both cars and trains, and US decides to focus on trains alone, would they be better off in their individual situations such that if a company is able to focus on where he has a comparative advantage, he can produce for himself and at the same time produce for another country. And where he has his weakness, he can import that from another company in another country. So what you are asking yourself is, should Japan be producing both cars and trains, or should US be producing both cars and trains? Why don't you identify your strengths and your weakness? Use your strengths and get someone to cover up for your weakness. So for you to know that, you need to find out what is the opportunity cost of Japan deciding to produce cars alone or trains alone. And what's the opportunity cost of US saying they want to produce cars alone or trains alone? Please pay attention. So let's look at, take for instance, Japan. So let's talk about Japan. Let's find out where Japan is strong and where Japan is weak. Is it in production of cars or production of trains? So what we're saying is that for cars, for every 1,800 units, yeah, of cars, because what you're saying is if they decide not to produce 650 units of trains, they will produce another 1,800 units of cars. That's what we're saying, because we're saying the same units are used to produce this situation that we have, right? So, which means for Japan to produce another 1,800 units of cars, it will lose, there'll be a loss of 650 units of train. because it's trying to focus on cars alone. So if it does that, that means that the cost of one unit of car for Japan will be equivalent to 1 times 650 divided by 1800. And that will give you, let me get my calculator. And if you have it, you can give me the number. 0.36. So which means for every 1 unit of car that Japan is producing, it's going to lose 0.36 unit of train. Remember where we're going. We're trying to find out where there is comparative advantage. So we know that. So which means if Japan wants to focus on production of cars, the cost to him, the extra cost to him is 0.36 unit of train. Yeah. Whereas if US wants to focus on cars alone, let's find out what is the comparative cost to US.
0.43.
I have
0.43.
the same
Okay.
now. So
0.43. Yeah. Yeah. Let's look at it. So we're saying that, okay, if US want to focus only on production of cars, it means that they will need to forfeit production of trains. So, and we know that normally US will produce 700 cars, that is equivalent to 300 trains. So for a 1 unit of car that they want to produce, then they will forfeit 300 over 700 trains. And that will surely give us that figure that you have. That's correct. Yeah. Nice. 0.43. So, which means it's going to cost US more than Japan to focus on the car. So if you look at these two companies in two different countries, for a product X, which is product car that we're talking about here, this product is better produced in Japan because Japan has a cheaper relative cost when you're looking at what is going to cost a US company. So what you are saying is that for this car that we're talking about, Japan has a comparative advantage. You can see still. But what about train? Let's see what Japan still has comparative advantage because Japan has absolute advantage earlier on. Now we are checking we are looking at the comparative advantage, and we're still seeing even for cars, Japan has a comparative advantage. But what about train? What would it cost Japan to produce train? What is the opportunity cost of, that will not be against the car. So I want you to do it. Yeah, you need to apply yourself. And let's do for US as well. What do you have? Okay. Let's look at it quickly. Nice. So you all align. So and you're in different places. So I assume that you actually did the correct thing. So what we're saying is if Japan wants to focus on production of trains alone, they will lose 1800. So they're going to lose 1800 of cars for production of 650. And US similarly will have to stop producing the whole of 700 so that they can produce the 300 trains. And that will give 700 over 300, 2.3, that's true. And 1800 over 650, 2.8. So you guys are correct for sure. Yeah, so with this one, who has the comparative advantage?
USA.
US, exactly. So which means for train, Japan does not have comparative advantage. US has a comparative advantage for this one. Is this clear? Because gradually, these little concepts, we're building it. Because if you're going to advise a company, because you're going to find a question whereby you have so many concepts built in it, and you must be able to start sieving those details out one by one. And also, when you're writing your report, you are able to consider everything that needs to be considered. You cannot advise this Japanese company now to go and start selling train in the US. No, because they are better off focusing on cars where they have comparative advantage and absolute advantage than trying to focus on manufacturing of trains and selling to their local country. Even India, Japan as a country, they should not produce to sell there. They should use all their resources to produce the cars where they have advantage. And those extra cars that they have produced, they can now ship it out to the US. And you're telling the US company to say, produce a lot of trains, produce all the trains that we need. The one you need locally of 300, and also produce the one Japan needs and ship to them. And you're telling Japan to supply all the cars, both to domestic market and to the foreign market. That is a summary of what we're talking about. Yeah. So